If I had known this bridge was going to cause this much trouble, I would have probably sold the property and got out of it before it even started.
Tony Maddox could be jailed for 9 months or cop a $20,000 fine for concreting this bridge on his property. He's charged with damaging a culturally significant waterway.
We've put what they call stabilised concrete over the top of the rocks, so that it actually cements the concrete in, cements the rocks in. And now the water comes up and over the top, runs down the stabilised concrete and runs straight down the creek.
This is the only entrance to his property here in 2J in WA's Wheatbelt region. This brook flows into the Avon River, a culturally significant waterway associated with the Noongar people's rainbow serpent dreaming. It's alleged Tony's bridge disrupts that flow and that he modified it without first obtaining approval from the state Aboriginal Affairs Minister. In your opinion, what have you done to this place?
Created a sanctuary, created a all year round wildlife sanctuary, and for that I get summonsed.
Traditional owners declined to be interviewed while the case is before the court, but told 730 they're disappointed they weren't consulted before Tony modified his bridge. Testifying in court, Noongar traditional custodian Rod Garlett commented on the state of WA's heritage laws.
It has no teeth, and Aboriginal culture isn't a priority in this state.
The case is emblematic of a much bigger debate that's dragged on for years.
I do have concerns about how serious we are as a nation in protecting significant sites of heritage.
The risks are the annihilation, the continued annihilation of culture.
In 2020, mining giant Rio Tinto destroyed 40,000-year-old rock shelters at Juukan Gorge in WA's north. It was an international embarrassment and put a spotlight on the state's Aboriginal heritage protection laws. In the wake of the disaster, the WA government ushered in a complete overhaul of its legislation. But the changes didn't last.
The reason why we're here, as Liddy and Shane said, is this is an unworkable bit of legislation.
Community backlash about what people could or couldn't do on their property, mostly from farming groups, pushed the government to repeal the Act just 5 weeks after it came in.
The legislation has unintentionally caused stress, confusion and division in the community. And for that, I'm sorry.
And the state issue spilled onto the national stage, just as Australia prepared for its referendum on an Indigenous voice to Parliament.
Minister, considering the shambolic and disastrous impact of the Western Australian Labor government's Aboriginal cultural heritage laws, particularly on farmers, local councils and environmental groups, will the minister now abandon the Albanese Labor government's promise to change cultural heritage laws at a national level?
The scare campaign.
Yep.
The scare campaign. You know, you're asking me questions about state legislation in an attempt to try and drop up opposition to the voice.
Despite protesting the state government's new legislation and the voice in 2023, Tony has become an unlikely ally in the push for reform. He says he didn't know the Act existed and now wants all cultural sites recorded on property titles to alert landowners.
If I'm guilty, that means that every farmer in WA is guilty. Every person who crosses a creek is guilty. The ramifications for WA are massive. I mean, I'm talking massive. The regulations that stop you doing things in that heritage area are the ones that need to be changed immediately. They are unworkable and can't be used at all. It's simple as that.
Section 18 is a part of WA's heritage laws which allows landowners to apply to alter or destroy a site of cultural significance. It's what Rio Tinto used to destroy sacred sites at Juukan Gorge. Now, under the current legislation, traditional owners can actually appeal any Section 18 approvals, but the Premier can also step in to override any decisions deemed of state or regional importance. Former Minister for Indigenous Australians Ken Wyatt says it leaves WA open to another Juukan Gorge-like disaster.
There is nothing stopping an individual 30 years' time saying, I'm going to ignore that. and then make the decision and then apologise in hindsight. Because we've seen that demonstrated over the history of this country. Aboriginal affairs has always been a contentious area. It's seen as a money drainer with results that are not brilliant at times. And so governments become nervous when they have a referendum result that might make them rethink.
Hannah McGlade, a member of the United Nations Permanent Forum for Indigenous Issues, believes heritage law reform has become a politically unsavoury area to pursue.
They don't seem to want to follow through with the commitments made in the Senate inquiry into Juukan Gorge, which was that federal legislation would be developed, would be strengthened. This can't be swept under the carpet. The federal government really should take the lead, but West Australia, this is a major issue for our government. We saw the debacle that followed, the huge investment into that law, which turned to be an absolute waste and a very big mistake. And now we have a completely unacceptable, a dangerous law which violates our international human rights commitments.
In a statement, WA Aboriginal Affairs Minister Tony Buddy said the government had worked to strike the right balance, and the amended legislation was based on years of consultation with Aboriginal people. The Federal Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek said the government has learned from WA's unsuccessful attempts and was consulting carefully on future laws. Ms McGlade, a Noongar woman, says governments at all levels should prioritise protecting cultural heritage at all costs.
Former Senator Pat Dodson once described this as genocidal, because Aboriginal culture is very much connected to land and to lands of heritage significance. That is the Aboriginal identity. When all those places are gone for the sake of mining and development, he asked, who are we left as Aboriginal people?
Others are more hopeful that change is on the horizon.
I think it was only a setback. I think what we will see is the resilience of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people prevail. You have setbacks, but you build on those setbacks to ensure better reforms and better protection into next 50, 60, 70 years.